I'd like to call this meeting of the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee to order. Just before we stand for the pledge, I'm going to let everyone know that that camera right there can pick up everyone's conversations in this room. So please be mindful of that. It does only point in this direction, however, and we are going to ask people to come up to the front here if they wish to speak later on in the meeting. And with that, if everyone would please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible. Thank you very much to all those who are here in person with us this evening, and to all those who are watching online. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded on YouTube and on Facebook. We have a couple quick items of regular business before we get into our budget hearing, so we'll proceed with those quickly so we can move right along and get to what everyone is here for this evening. I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of March 6, 2025 as written.
So moved.
Motion by Sean, second by Heather. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? And I say yes, so that is unanimous. We also have bills and payroll, so I would recommend a motion to accept the bills and payroll warrants as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Sean, second by Heather. Any questions or comments on those bills and payroll? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And I say yes, so that is unanimous. Now I would officially like to open our budget hearing for the evening. And we will start with the presentation of the FY26 budget. Yes, it is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Groundhog Day, then I think it's fourth. We'll go through the presentation, and I'm no less excited this time than I was. So, what we do here is there's a lot. We do a lot. One of the things that we're proud of are on this screen. We don't list every single one of them. We try to be current as we go forward, but in terms of our curriculum, we are really proud of our MVP Academy with 12 juniors and seniors that are enrolled in the vocational program. We've talked about that quite a bit. Matter of fact, we took a visit today. And that is in conjunction with Monty Tech. Gardner and Fitchburg are also partner districts. But that has been something that we've been working very, very hard on. I'll get to why in terms of programs and pathways and options that we'd like to offer. We've expanded our digital literacy curriculum in the elementary and the middle school. We've also added an 8th grade world language this year that now offers the seal by literacy. So when we start talking about extracurricular, we have the return of our spring musical, which we haven't had, I think, in 3 years, I think, potentially. We've seen quite an expansion of the middle school band. We're growing, we're getting better, and if you've been to the concert, you would certainly agree with me. Athletics, we're still trying to expand our fields. We have one athletic field that we have the majority of our varsity and varsity athletic events on. We during the summer of last year, the field that's inside the middle of the track, for whatever reason, it just was not in a good enough shape to hold any varsity games, etc., because of the pitch. And so we had to fix that this year, and we did, and that will be ready for this fall. The enrollment, we continue to increase residents in terms of our student enrollment. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Facilities, we're constantly trying to upgrade our facilities where it's appropriate and where we can. We've replaced the library carpet and we've added heat pumps to middle school and high school library and kitchen. We talked a lot about heat pumps, we talked a lot about pneumatic switches, we talked a lot about pneumatic tubes. This, half of this building was built in the 1950s. Pneumatic tubes are, that's exactly what they are, little plastic rubber tubes, and they get dried out. And they have what we call runaway heat, and so costing us thousands of dollars when the heat should be on, or maybe not coming on when it should. So a lot of those, a lot of the larger areas have been able to add heat pumps. And of course, that saves us electricity, but it also adds, in some areas, air conditioning, which is actually pretty nice. We switched to an e-book system in the middle school and high school library. I've said this a couple times, not everyone knows that the library is in the high school side of our facility, and many times the middle school students just did not have an opportunity to check out books. Now that it's from the comfort of their little computer, they're able to check out books at their leisure. The budget, we continue to try to close discrepancy in teacher administrator salaries compared to neighboring districts. We talked a lot about that over the last couple of years. I think we've made a pretty good move in the right direction this last fiscal year. And a big item, we moved health insurance out of school choice into the general fund. If anyone has been listening or paying attention to that, it was a real concern. It was placed in there probably for budgetary reasons. I'm not sure exactly when. I think it was at like 14 or 15, Anne Marie, I think, when we checked it out, but that was dangerous because health insurances go up and sometimes school choice revolving goes down. So that was the concern, but we were able to move that out here. All right. So here are some great pictures of all the wonderful kiddos that we have, not all, but many of them. And a lot of the things that I've just, a lot of projects and activities that are going on that we're obviously very, very proud of. Okay, so mine. So folks, here we talk a lot about chapter 7, we talk a lot about chapter 7, that's how we're from. That's how school is funded process. The foundational budget is based on the number of pupils. So when we start talking about foundation budget per pupil expenditure, we're talking about every school age student lives in the towns of Phillipston and Thumbleton, go to a public school, and he does not need to be here, Narragansett. Okay, so that's important because when those numbers go up, we receive chapter 78. When they don't go up, either they stay stagnant or they go down. We are what they call held harmless, which means that they won't take money away from you, but they just won't give you any more. Okay, so we've, in the last 5 years, we have actually received chapter 78, which means we've actually increased the number of student age students in our 2-member towns 3 out of the last 5 years. And that's great. So on the right side of the black line, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those are what we would like to call multipliers, but incremental cost above the base is probably a more polite way to say that. The formula is set up to identified specialized populations, and the calculations are receive more money for those students, special education, ELL, low income, etc. So this year alone, we doubled the number of ELL kids. That was a surprise. That was not forecasted. ELL students require specialized instruction in terms of accessing the English language. So that was new to us. We also increased our number of low income students in the district. Last year, we're in low income group 7, green circle, lower left. And now we're at low income 8, which is a percentage of 42.31. What does that mean? Well, lots of times it just obviously it indicates the level of poverty in your district, of course, but it does make you more attractive for grant opportunities, etc. Again, we'd like that number not to be as high, but it is, and that represents our community, our foundation budget per pupil is $15,235. So this is what they call the summary bid. And so what you'll see in FY 25, we have 1,330 enrolled in terms of foundation students. In FY 26, projected 1,347, which will be an increase of 17 students, and you'll see the lower main circle, which means that, again, we have more students than we did last year. Given the calculated rate that we just talked about, we will receive $561,748, which is that is great. Okay, so that's good. Okay. So given that, that's where we sit in terms of our foundation enrollment. And that's how, how we are funded from the state. Okay. We talked a lot about student enrollment in general. Remember, foundation enrollment, any student school age who lives in our two member towns who go to a public school. When we start talking about student enrollment, a lot of times we're talking about the kids in seats, right? Kids who are in front of you every single day. So when we start looking back, when people ask, well, when we justified or, when we presented, the increase we did last year in terms of students, we relied on information like this. There was a 2-year period that we increased our foundation enrollment by over 100 students. And so when we start looking at that, it was right after COVID, quite frankly. So when you start looking at, okay, we have 100 for the differential from FY 21, we have 185 more foundation, students in general, pardon me. We've been actively and purposefully reducing the number of school choice students because we're becoming overcrowded. It also stems from a conversation and a budget conversation back in FY 2021 when cuts were made, and it was well received at that time that we had 250 school choice kids back in FY 20. 250, it's a lot. And so, it begs the question about if you're going to have to reduce the number of staff, then we have all of these students. So what are you going to do about that? So we've been actively reducing the number of school choice students as they graduate. So what does that mean? Generally speaking, back in, when we were taking on students, we would put out that we had school choice, there would be a wait list. And I would try to replace as many students that we lost to graduation and students who were school choiced here who left for Monty Tech in the 8th grade. So that was my standard, right? So if we had 17 seniors who were school choice and they left, they graduated, and 8 kids who were school choiced here went on to Monty Tech to be paid by their sending town, mind you. No, that's I would at least try to replace those students wherever I could across the district. At any one time, I've been asked this question a lot, but we would have anywhere from 25 to 50 kids on a wait list for the elementary, easy. And didn't have that many slots. We would obviously have far more folks who wanted to school choice their children here than we really had spots. So actively, given what happened in FY 20, we stopped taking school choice students at the elementary 5 years ago. The last 4 that were grandfathered into the kindergarten, because back then, if you were pre-K and you were here, you really automatically just kind of transitioned as a school choice student. Those students are now 4th graders. So we have not taken school choice students at the elementary for close to almost 5 years. And so what happens when you start looking at that ratio, we'll get to we have close to 560. I don't have that in front of me, but 560 students, only 4 of them are school choice. So those are all residents down there, and certainly in Greenville. So this slide is good because it shows the difference between enrolled, those are the students who are in front of teachers, walk our hallways every day, and the number of foundation enrollment students. And so when you look at those numbers, for those of you who, like this kind of stuff, That is a great ratio. As many kids who do live in our district, this does not count, students who go to my tech because it's just it's a whole other, report. But many of the kids who actually live in our towns come to Narragansett. So school choice, as we just talked about, again, I could go back all the way to FY20, but we have, again, the number of students we take in, we have actively reduced. You can see that. One of the things that we watch very closely, is the number of, sending. Because first off, and we'll get to the yellow line, which is the important line, which is the differential, right? You cannot have more students leaving the district than coming in, become upside down, as they call it, and so you're actually paying almost twice, so to speak. And so we try to keep a healthy ratio, which I'll talk about, but we have reduced the number of students who actively school choice out of our district. Well, every year since 22. No, I'm not pandering. I say this every time. If you've been listening, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the teachers and the folks who work in the buildings. Teachers, pardon me, parents do not put their kids when they do not feel safe, they're not safe, they are not educated well. Because if either one of those two are present, they will school choice their students in a moment. So the very fact that we keep reducing the number of students who are school choice out is a credit to our educators. Our administrators, everyone who works in the buildings. So when I'm asked, like, what is a healthy ratio? Like, again, it all depends on a lot of things, but we try to keep it around 75, 80, we try to keep it around there because we have quite a few expenses that come out of the school choice revolving. And which we'll get to in a bit, but many of the biggest concern, now that we have insurance out of there, is we have 9 teachers in school choice revolving. That was done, I don't know how many years ago. I say that only because this is a new thing. Matter of fact, many districts who enjoy, the ability to have a good, healthy ratio often put teachers in school choice for budget, saving matters to try to make whatever needs to happen. It's a bit of a dangerous business. I think we'd all understand that. So when you look at this, you got of course, sending, receiving, and of course, the blue line is the difference. And we actually calculate that by dollars in this case. So I say it's estimated for FY26 because they give you the preliminary report in December, but they don't actually finalize it till June. Because kids come and go all the time. And so it literally is just a moving. When I say target, we have kids coming in and out. And if you looked at the report, you might see a kid for 0.5 this, 0.5 that, 0.8, whatever, depending on how many months they made it or left or stayed. In general, we receive $5,000 per student whose school choices into the district and thus pay that out for the students who leave. One of the things I didn't talk about last night is the sped increment, which is through circuit breaker, which means if a student with special needs choices into the district, and this has been asked before, well, that cost is a lot more than just a student coming in. Do we bear that cost? And the answer is that it's not a 100%, reimbursement, but through circuit breaker in the sped office, we do receive an incremental increase to that for that student, depending on the services that they need and receive. So you could see an incremental, increase anywhere from, again, I'm going to make this up because it changes every year, but from $450 to $32,000, depending on the services that the child is receiving. This is a new slide. I said that. It is. It's a new slide. And why is it a new slide? Because I think that in the past, when we talk about the number of employees, period, we generally just stick to the general fund, not to be tricky, not to be sly, but that is what it's going to cost. You remember council in this case, or the staff. So of course, the lion's share will always come out of the general fund because that's where, the money is, or the big money, talking about money that's given to us by the state and both the housing on case. So I won't read through them all, folks. I mean, they're all listed right there. But there are other avenues in which we are able to not only fund things, but staff as well. So circuit breaker revolving, I just kind of talked about that a little bit. We have 2 teachers, 2 BCBAs, and a psychologist come out of circuit breaker revolving. It's in the IDE grant, right? Our extended day revolving, when people say extended day, that is completely self-supported. Through, you know, the money that folks pay for extended day, we are able to do business, in a sense. Cafeteria revolving, again, self-supported. Again, right now, it's, it's because that lunch is free and whatever the monies that come in cover all of the employees for service. Oh, I can't do my joke for pre-K. I'm gonna do here, but I'll see what I can do. Grants, of course, we have a lot of grants. I'm gonna have to do the joke, but anyway. Grants, we write grants all the time. We're trying to always constantly write grants, and any grant we can get a hold of. We try to do that, and there's a lot of grants that are just kind of almost revolving, like Title I, et cetera, but there are other ones as well. Preschool revolving is not self-supportive because 2 wonderful, excellent, unbelievably talented teachers in there have been around a bit. And so what happens is that preschool revolving, sometimes the revolving accounts, sometimes I'll grow that. But of course, and I was asked a lot of questions about pre-K. We'll talk about that once we get past this. But it does fund the lion's share of the folks who staff those great classrooms. School choice, we just talked about school choice, right? Revolving account, and we talked all about that. There are 9 teachers. So from the technical sense, Nan Marie, creates the budget, and this is what I call it, the state nomenclature, right? So everything that we do is, has an account number, an account nomenclature. It's broken down into these areas. So again, I'll go over them, but administration is advertising, school committee expenses, central office administration, instructional. Okay, other school services, nursing, transportation, athletics. I mean, obviously, when we break this down in these areas, this is really about the end of year report. It's about when we are audited. It's all of this, and so this is where, when we're looking at, okay, where are we seeing the highest increases? This gives us like the 30,000-foot view. Obviously, it makes sense. So when you look up here, you say, well, 18.15 other school services, alleged nursing, transportation, athletics. We just had a new transportation contract. It went up. So I'm just saying it makes sense when you look from up here. We understand that our benefits and fixed charges, well, that's insurance. Insurance is projected to at least go up 9% this year. That, we do have loans, structured for leadership or I believe would be one of those. And tuitions, this is out of school district, school choice, charter tuitions, et cetera. That's gone down a little bit, which is great, which is fantastic. And a lot of that might, the work we've been doing with creating some different program options, which we'll talk a little bit about later. All right. Okay, so when you get down to like the micro, molecular level, we started looking at, okay, so what has cost us the most this year? Well, if you're a resident, you know that water and sewer costs have gone up, and then same for us. For the school, yellow bus transportation, as we call it, went up 30%. This contract, special education transportation, that is a number that we try very hard to manage. Like we keep an eye on that. That you look at $77,000, like, okay, but that can really get out of hand quickly because especially transportation has increased incredibly. Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment, well, retirements go up. At least the percentage did for this, and that went up 14%. Group insurance, 12%. Liability insurance, 10%. Health insurance, 14%. And of course, the cost of living increase across the board at 3%, is the most. Okay. We get a lot of questions about it. So we started talking about the bus bid, and I will readily admit, Anne Marie and I's familiarity with not only the process, but each other over the years. I just add that we were both business managers at the same time. I was in Gardner, she was here. And we noticed that at that time, this is back a ways, that something without going to jail, that something wasn't right. That bus bids were not, it just didn't, we'd get 4, 5, 6 vendors come. They wouldn't place a bid and we'd only get one. Like we would get things like that. So we go out to rebid, and next thing you know, the same 6 come back and only get the same bid, and now next thing you know, it's out. If you would like to, you can certainly Google that. The state is actually very concerned about this. They have a task force they're trying to look into this issue, especially our way, so to speak. And that, again, that happened. We had 4 vendors come out. How many vendors came out that one?
We had 3 bus companies.
3 bus companies came out, 2 came back for the final bid, 1 gave us a bid. So when we checked around, so well, you should have rebid, you should have put back out there. No. And so I'm going to say that to you because from our experience, not only our experience, but the experience of the business managers that and districts that we talked about, right? So Amherst, they had 2 came in. By the way, 1 gave a bid. Medway they only got 1 anyway. Berlin, Boylston, 1. Stoughton, Stoughton, 1. Berkshire here, 1. Douglas, 1. Drake, 1. Wakefield, 1. Peabody, 1. Quabbin, 3. Gardner, 1. Winchendon, 2. Ash West, 2. All went up in our, was that? Oh, Winchendon's 1, sorry, my fault. There it is. So I don't know that if it surprises you or not, but each contract went up exactly 25% in all of these districts. That's weird, right? I don't mean to be coy about it. This is what's happening to us, not just us, to a lot of folks. Again, Google mass government bus issue, and they're looking into some of these things which are just something. So there is the story behind the bus bid, and because I know that we've been receiving some questions about that.
Before you go on that, Chris, just mention what happens if you go back out the bid, not knowing that you only had 1 bidder.
Well, if we go back up the bid, first off, we'd never gotten just the way the bid process goes, we'd never got what it was going to cost us before the budget. First off, that's one thing, not that that's the primary thing. And I'm sorry, I don't know where you're going about
Having so many bidders and only 1 person bid into it, that the new bid is gonna go up.
So, well, I was alluding to that from our first experience, is that what we learned is again, it was a lesson learned, is that when the same folks came back, the bid went up. And another person from the other bus company said, it's a good price, you probably should take it. So we made all the notifications that we were supposed to make with with Massachusetts, et cetera. Nothing ever happened. And that was several years ago. So I just want to let you know that it's a problem with people with that. So what have we done in terms of sustainability strategies? Well, health insurance costs, we moved them from school choice and into the general fund. That's key. And we've already talked about. The employee salary was adjusted to be closer to the local average. We talked a lot about that. We've had, we've shown where we're all at in terms of local districts and beyond. We've increased the book access for students utilizing the electronic library, that upgrade and expand athletic fields. We're constantly trying to do that. The energy savings, trying to make a little joke about the phomatic tubes, et cetera. The library, as an example, has one of the heat pumps. He estimated we had runaway heat. He estimated that forever how many days that was going on, just calculated by 180 days. It was how many dollars an hour? Was it in terms of something like a week, we're spending $500 a week on this runaway heat or something to that effect. That's what can happen with these foods. That's actually, we're actually seeing some movement on the electricity side of things, or pardon me, the fuel side of it, which has been great. We've had positions to meet the needs of a growing enrollment. Okay. So. Preliminary budget hearing, and even before that, the tri-board, etc. Level service, I want to explain what a level service is. Level service is, you are proposing the same amount of staff members that you have this year for next. Okay. Level service. So, of course, that's not level funded, right? Things go up. So the fact is that when we did this is where we start, because this is where, again, we wanted to start because we, worked hard to get to this level of strength. So when you look at these numbers, though, they're gigantic, and they are. So when you look at 11% increase to Templeton, which is $965,000, you look at Phillipston, which again is $165,000, an 8% increase. It's, these are numbers that are very, very hard to sustain. They can't sustain, you can't sometimes meet them under the normal budgetary 2.5, Prop 2.5 type of scenario. So in speaking, well, we had the preliminary meeting, we had the all boards meeting. And so in speaking with that, we were instructed to create a budget to only increase 2.5% over the amount that we received last year. Which for Templeton. That's who requested. So we did. So what did we do? The need or the ask, however you want to put it, was I needed to reduce the proposed FY26 budget by $882,907. What I considered the federal and state requirements for services non-negotiables. What do I mean by that? Special education services is certainly one of them. Everything is important, but when we start getting down to the nitty-gritty, that we are federally mandated many things, and one of them is to educate special needs students a certain way, depending on what the IEP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We wanted to reduce the least impact. Okay, and I'll get into that as we go. We want to consider the district's strategic plan, goals, and outcomes. We still have a plan, regardless of what is going on. We need to press forward. We can never stand still. We need to move forward with the goals and objectives that we have. And what we wanted to do is to try to degree of impact with direct instruction to obviously minimize that as best as possible. So before we go on to the next slide, before we get there, I'm going to try to make sure that everyone understands what this all means. What we tried to do, I'm responsible ultimately, good, bad, or indifferent, is that what was the least impact to students and to the staff members that were going to be impacted if these cuts were to take place. Okay, what does that mean? We needed to be strategic. So I actively looked at positions that, like one, again, always looking at student, right? Sometimes that meant needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few at times, not always. But secondly is that was there a landing spot for the staff member who would be affected? That was important to me and important to others, if it made sense in terms of certification, ability levels, et cetera, et cetera. So when we go to this list, it's going to seem chaotic. I'll be very candid. It will. It's if it looks chaotic, then if you want it to be chaotic, then it's chaotic. But what I'm going to try to explain is why I did what I decisions I made in order to be, the best fit for those two very difficult goals, and try to be as equitable as possible across the board, and then to meet the goal of cutting $850,000. So I'm going to this is important to hear. The cost that you see, some would say savings, others would say cost, may represent the person who is being bumped not the person who you think, or maybe in here, that you know. Okay, that's important. Because someone has at times gone, that guy does not make that, it's the person or the position that is being either eliminated or bumped. That is the savings. Please remember that because sometimes it gets a little confusing. All right. So the TES team chair, that position has been open, well, for a while. So, with, cut without a face, quite frankly, was an easy move. That did not affect, an employee. And we'll have to figure out how we're going to conduct meetings, but the fact of the matter is that that was really our first team of students at the elementary school. Pardon. One, because there was a landing spot, a natural landing spot for the employee, and direct instruction would not be it. Middle school reading teacher, that's a tough one, quite frankly, but it certainly was created for all the right reasons. It just became a matter of landing spot and ultimately what the bigger picture will look like in terms of accentuating, what we have at the middle and high school ultimately. The middle school digital literacy, there was a natural landing spot. And so again, when you start looking at these things, it again may seem chaotic, it may not, but that was, a good use of a cut because there was a plan. Middle school UA Spanish. One, we're very proud of the middle school Spanish program. Well, we are. When we start looking at things, we need to make sure that we have it at the high school. Not a lot of middle schools have Spanish. This may create a bit of a staffing issue, or pardon me, not a staffing issue, but a student numbers issue. But again, there was a place to it. High school Thrive Adjustment Council. That is, again, one of the things that we've worked very hard is, on the counselor side, on the social emotional side, on the therapy side, etc. Why? Because we have a lot of need. We have, a lot of mental health issues. And I don't say a lot, but I guess there's a lot, and they need services. So this was a hard position to cut, but again, in terms of the total number of students affected was made. Assistant Director of Pupil Personnel Services has been cut. That position has been around since, probably 2021. It's done a lot of different things. In terms of special education, it's going to be a vital role into helping us get out of this funk with the Department of Ed, because we are, constantly, being cited for the things such as, staffing or IEP timeliness, and this, we're really trying to move into a better direction. School psychologists, we have 3 in the district, and we're gonna try to utilize the remaining 2 to cover. I'll just use this as an example. Again, I don't know if this falls on deaf ears if you don't understand the sheer numbers. But currently I think so far, the elementary school has done 74 evaluations, and we're in March. That's a lot, if you didn't know. We're gonna eliminate 1 bus. We're gonna go to a double run. It's gonna be crowded. And we're just not gonna be able to offer a late bus to students. So there may be some residual, effects there, whether it be after school, extracurricular activities or something to that effect, but that was, again, that was we need buses, but the fact is we can make it happen. We just have to do a double run and they're gonna be tight. Let's see, athletic transporting coaches, we're gonna move them to athletic revolving. We're gonna have to reinstate user fees. It only makes sense. We're gonna have to find some way to cover some of the transportation needs that or at least help to do that, in order to keep athletics. Health insurance, again, this is a number that may ebb and flow because we know that in fact, the positions of the folks who've been cut will not be returning. They will not have, of course, health insurance, and so there is inevitably a savings there. It will be countered with potential unemployment, but we'll have to just figure that out as we go. We had to make a cut in Title I, but really that was more along the lines that it's just grant funding is not, it's not as robust as it was. Again, we're concerned that Title I may very well go away. We don't know that for a fact, but those are some of the things that we are looking into, and a cafeteria worker position that was a position that we're just not going to fill. Yes. Oh, thank you. So when looking at that, what does that do? And I said this last night to the town of Templeton when we presented, is that the line item budget and the expense sheet, or pardon me, the revenue sheet, it's gonna look a lot different 24 hours later. And so, again, if you were to compare the two, if you had the two, then they would look a lot different. So as you can see, with the 884,000 rounding cuts, it brings the total Templeton contribution 2.5%, pardon me. And because of how the numbers fall with number of kids in Templeton and number of kids in Phillipston, that the total increase to Phillipston will be 1.69, which means that it'll be an increase to the district, to the total general fund income of 3.28. Okay, so again, that's what those cuts do in terms of the FY26 budget. One of the things that we were asked by Templeton Finance Committee, Advisory Committee, is that can you do projections, several years in advance? And so because that we had at least the NDEA contract settled, we felt, when I say more confident, it was, the numbers could be more sure. But it presented a couple problems, which I just want to identify right off the bat, is that special education can ebb and flow, sometimes depending on, a student moving in, moving out. So that was a consideration. Also health insurance, those are, that's an area which you could see a 3 or 4% increase or even greater, because we're seeing a 9 right now. I'm seeing 3 or 4 above what we're looking at this year. So what we did is we applied a 10% increase to both. And we figured that when we looked at everything, it really kind of averaged out to that. And we felt that that's at least a good starting point. Okay. Projections represent the floor, not necessarily the ceiling, is what I'm trying to say, because I cannot project special education costs one way or another. Okay, so we found something interesting. Well, it's interesting. Can't help it. Be interested in it, is that, so if we were to go level service this year and only go level service next year, right? So level service, okay. With the contract that, that all their parameters that I just spoke of, you would look at an increase of $1.6 million. Okay, which is a lot. When we looked at it with cuts, it's $1.6 million. I'm sorry, it's negative. Sorry, my fault. I'm going. It's $882,000 less. And so it's a 3.28% increase for projected with cuts. Okay, and you can't go back in. And it's a 6.89% without cuts. Right? All right. So it would be $882,000 less. Yeah, but anyway, all right. So when we go to FY27, it's not a 1-year problem, sorry. That was this year, FY 26, my fault. FY 27, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. So FY 27 level service, FY 26 level service, FY 27 level service, my fault. All right. Okay. Right. Is a 1.5, $1.5 million increase of level service to level service, right? Without it, it's a $1.5 million increase again. It just really stays around $1 million is what I'm trying to say. Now, what are some of the factors that could benefit this number? Well, I go back to, oh, by the way, this was also level service, but we did not add an increase in students, the foundation enrollment. We kept everything there. So because I don't know what could possibly increase or decrease. So are we going to be held harmless, or am I going to pretend that we're going to receive, $600,000 because we received 18 kids more than we didn't play into that, because I think that starts getting into, getting into some gray areas that I don't want to do. So we really just kind of left everything the same, so to speak, across the board. So, oops, there it is. In FY 28, level service to level service, a little bit, 1.3. And then projected FY 28 with the cuts we're talking about now, 3 years out, right? Is a $1.3 million increase. Why? People say, right? So why, how is that? Well, last night we talked about what step increases. For example, like, why is this so much money when it's only a 3% COLA increase? Well, that's because, as folks know, there are percentages built into the steps well beyond the years of probably everyone here, quite frankly. And they just multiply year after year. So again, the numbers are what they are. And we saw this coming. We need to speak to it a little bit. We saw this coming a couple of years ago, and I think I may have misspoke a little bit. I think or people were confused. Is that last year, when we were trying to get the FY 25 budget, I was asked point blank that if the decisions came and got this, that everything happened the way we wanted, or it did actually end up happening, what would be the increase for this year? And I said, it's hard to say, because at that point, the NDA contract wasn't settled. We didn't have the busing contract, we didn't have those things. And I said about $1 million. I think people thought that I meant that we had that conversation this year. It was last year. I saw a couple of emails and I saw a couple of Facebook posts asking me about how that happened. And because when you start projecting out, it's projection. We didn't know what the percent increase was going to be this year, what it ultimately ended up being. But when we start to look at way back, we're talking about last March, we could see that if things went the way they were going, it was going to be about $1 million a year. Again, just looking at just numbers that you're just really trying to put together. And so that's where that is in the financial state that we're in right now. These numbers are scary, to be very candid. When you start looking at, going to the meetings, so far I've been in Templeton, we go to Philston next week. We keep an eye on things. We read whatever folks are giving us from the towns. We understand, we get this. And so I said this last night, I don't necessarily have an answer. Because once, you get to a point where you're at bare bones, and again, I suppose that'll be argued about what that actually means. But the fact is that at some point that it's just as big as we are, because we have the number of kids that we have. And again, I'm gonna go back to services that we have to provide. I don't know that is really sold. I don't think, we don't talk about that as much because I think it's sensitive information. So we talk about kids with special needs, and you try not to, dwell on that, but those expenses are going up. And we've already increased 3 sped pairs this year alone, for next year, because of IEP needs. We don't dictate that necessarily. The team does, or the needs of the child. So ultimately, that is what we've been asked to do. We've done that. Those are the cuts that we've made. I met with every staff member that it affected. And I said the same thing. I know things will change. I just don't know how. Meaning, I don't know how everything will ultimately fall out. It's like, you never do, so when I retire, so then it's a lot of change, even, from March on to June. But that, but ultimately, that number, that is what it'll take to be a 2.5% increase year over year. Questions?
So I'm gonna open it up to school committee for questions or comments first. And then we'll open it up to the public for speaking. And I will remind everyone of where to go for that, once we get to that point, but I would open it up to school committee first. Sean.
Is group insurance negotiated locally or is that all at the state level?
It's the mass teachers retirement teachers, the
Perfect.
system when they retire is what they're going to.
Yep, perfect, thank you. That's what I thought, and that was the answer I provided
Yep.
people when asked. But I wanted to
Yep.
confirm that.
What, Mr. Coach?
Oh, sorry, Sean.
Just because I have to know, Dr. Casvan, what impact will this have on accreditation of the school going forward? And if Molly wants to chime in on that one, I'm
I
certainly.
think Molly would be best, honestly, to answer, because I'm not. But sure.
We're actually offering us accreditation right now for high school. Did you say accreditation?
Yeah,
Yeah, we actually are in year one of our accreditation right now, so we're going through the assessment stage and then we'll have some action steps to put in place next year. The cuts that are proposed should not have a direct impact on our high school accreditation process.
So. I just want, more of a comment, I think, than a question. On page 10, we talked a little bit about other general funds, you don't have to go back to them. You talked a little bit about, the general funds and the grants, and in particular, it reflects some of the positions related to counselors, paras, and therapists. On page 11, increases, instructional and public services to the highest budget line. Well, presentation, Chris, you spoke a little bit about students with special needs. In the past, I know that we spoke many times about the increase that we've had here in Kansas, with the students with special needs. I just want to be very clear that many of the positions, the counselors, the paras, and the therapists, among some of the other ones, have a direct correlation to the services that we require, that we are required for most of our disadvantaged students. You actually made the statement when you were speaking about the proposed cuts that these have the least impact on students. However, again, I want to be very clear that least impactful does not mean influential on our students.
Well put.
I have a few thoughts, and I will apologize in advance because I attempted to capture some of my thoughts and it turned into, it turned out a lot longer than I thought, but I think it's important that I share, how I'm feeling, because I do think that there are, significant amount of people that also feel the same way right now. So for members of the school committee, Dr. Cassavant, fellow residents, educators, and all those in attendance here and watching from home, thank you for being here tonight. Your participation is paramount to the budgeting process and it's greatly appreciated. I can't tell you how heartwarming it is to have a room full of people here to participate. Most of the time we are talking to an empty room. I want to start with hard, undeniable data points that strike at the heart of truth and transparency. These data points are all public information and can be found on the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's website. If you attempt to go there now, you will see what educators are faced with every day. It is currently down for maintenance until about 9:30. But if we're still here at 9:30 or you're at home and awake and you want to go verify these data points, go ahead and do so. According to the data presented on this website, actually, before I go into that, it's important to recognize that most of the most up-to-date information on this website lags a little bit behind. So you might see 2023 as the most recent. 2024 hasn't been provided in some cases. According to the data represented on this website, our district's per pupil funding has failed to keep pace with the growing needs of our students. There are 306 school districts in Massachusetts. 291 of them spend more per pupil than the Narragansett Regional School District spends per pupil. That means there are only 14 school districts that spend less per student than we do. Ash West, Athol, Gardner, Fitchburg, and Ralph C. Mahar, all neighboring communities, dedicate more funding per student than we do. Our student-to-teacher ratio has crept upward and could fall anywhere from 22 to 30. Those are estimates or more, and this will only increase with proposed cuts. We know that we are stretching our educators thin and impacting the quality of education our children receive, and we are unable to lessen this burden. In fact, the burden will only increase, and I fear for the health, both physical and mental, of our educators as they try to meet the needs of our children. Our ability to provide competitive salaries to attract and retain high-quality educators lags behind neighboring districts, making it harder to recruit and keep the best teachers for our students. With reference to fiscal year 2024, our average teacher salary was the lowest among neighboring school districts. Dr. Cassavant, our school committee, and our teachers union worked incredibly hard to make our educator salaries competitive, which is reflected in the increases that our community saw in our initial level funded budget, among other contractual costs. Please know that even with this increase in pay, our educators continue to be paid less than many of the school districts around us. Let's shine some light on achievement. Even with our educators being asked to do more with less, our students outperform students in our surrounding communities, Gardner, Athol, Mahar, and Fitchburg, in terms of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations on the MCAS. That's our state's assessment tied to school accountability measures. I'm not sure that this is something that is even reasonable to expect of our educators moving forward. How can they be expected to maintain those performance levels with more students and less support? As the vice chair of this committee, I feel deeply responsible, or a deep responsibility to ensure that every decision we make is grounded in what is best for our students while being a good partner to our towns. This is not about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about the children in our classrooms who rely on us to provide the resources they need to thrive. As an administrator in a neighboring regional school, I have a unique perspective on how our funding challenges compared to those of other districts. We're at a crossroads. The fiscal cliff that those of us in public service keep hearing and talking about is here, and we must act. Some districts and communities are finding ways to innovate and invest in their schools, while we find ourselves struggling to simply maintain the status quo. We have to ask ourselves, will we be the district and the community that chooses to fall behind, or will we be the community that fights for its students and their families? As a mother of a student in this district, I see firsthand the impact of these budgetary decisions on our children. When class sizes grow and extracurricular programs are cut, when critical support services are underfunded, and it's not just numbers on a page, it's our kids who feel the consequences. And the hard truth is that our most vulnerable students are low income, students with disabilities, students of color, who will feel budget cuts at a disproportionate rate than their peers. I simply cannot stand for this, and I encourage all of those who feel the same to be brave and to speak out. And finally, as a resident of one of the towns in this district, I understand the concerns of taxpayers. Every dollar spent should be scrutinized and used effectively. Our committee has worked tirelessly to forge trusting relationships with the select boards, finance committees, advisory committees, and town managers of both communities. We have been transparent with costs and projections and protected time and space to meet regularly to discuss budgets, programs, and needs of both the school and the towns. Despite some of the claims out there on social media, the relationships that were built during these meetings were and will continue to be the single most important indicator of success. Because this isn't just about our school district. Our town departments are being asked to cut from their already tight budgets that do not meet the needs of the residents in our community. Our citizens are seeing their taxes increase each year and are feeling like maybe they're not receiving their money's worth. Some of our frustrated residents take to social media and make claims about spending within our school district that are meant to be helpful. I assume that their intentions are to initiate a rallying cry to defend the average taxpayer struggling to make ends meet, and I get it. I'm one of those taxpayers. I respect their willingness to speak out, and I truly believe that those spreading misinformation on these platforms mean well. They just do not understand school finance, as well as the funding of municipalities and their departments. My ask of everyone hearing this plea is to commit to understanding public education costs rather than making harmful statements that suggest our school system is being reckless in its spending. Commit to understanding how the budgets of the town departments and our school system impact each other, rather than pitting us against each other. It is true that at times town departments have had to make cuts because they were asked to, but our school and the children and staff within it are not the cause, they're not the enemy. The cause is and will continue to be the cost of educating our children and providing essential town services are increasing at rates that we simply cannot keep up with without working together to find a solution. The mandates associated with all things education are truly complex and come with little to no funding to support these requirements. They are quite literally bankrupting school systems. Yesterday, I attended a virtual meeting with school committee members and NASD delegates where I was reminded that the cost of transportation, health insurance, and instructional costs are impacting districts across the state. I was encouraged to build relationships with our town officials and our community members as a way to move forward. I shared that our school committee continues to reach out to our town offices to have these hard discussions despite some of the challenges that have come to light over the last few weeks. Sorry. I am incredibly grateful to all of our town representatives who have continued to show up and to do the work that is necessary to move us all forward. But let's be clear. Investing in education is not just an expenditure, it's an investment in our community's future. Forming and fostering positive relationships among all of our departments and committees is an investment in our future. Finding creative ways to increase revenue or improve cost efficiency is an investment in our future. Strong schools, police, fire, and other community departments lead to increased property values, engaged citizens, a thriving local economy, and is an investment in our future and the future of the generations to come. We can't afford to let short-term budget cuts create long-term damage. We must advocate for sustainable funding that ensures our children receive the education they deserve, and our citizens have access to all town services that are necessary in order to maintain safe neighborhoods. That means working collaboratively with town officials, seeking innovative revenue solutions and making strategic investments that will pay dividends to generations to come. I urge all of us, committee members, town officials, and residents to take an honest look at our priorities. The future of our children, our schools, and our community depend on the choices that we make now. I want to say thank you to our school committee chair, Jen, for everything that you do for our school, our town, and for this committee. We don't recognize the tremendous amount of work and pressure put on you each year as we discuss our budget. Thank you to the rest of the committee for showing up and representing your town. Thank you to Dr. Cassavant and the central office staff for keeping our children and their families first and all that you do every day. And lastly, and most importantly, thank you to our educators for caring for our children. They're the very definition of our future and for always doing what's right for them. I didn't sleep much last night. My students and my staff remind me of how long-winded I can be sometimes, and I appreciate letting me get that off my chest. Okay.
with those great words, we're going to move into our public input section. And so just as a reminder, we do have a policy around this. And so I am going to read some of the relevant speakers, some of the relevant pieces. I'm not gonna read the whole thing because it's very long, but I'm gonna read the relevant pieces. Speakers will be allowed up to 3 minutes to present their material and must begin their comments by stating their name and city town. I may permit an extension of this time limit in extenuating circumstances as chair. Topics for discussion should be limited to those items within the school committee's scope of authority. The authority of the school committee primarily concerns the review and approval of the budget of the district's public schools, the performance of the superintendent, and the educational goals and policies of the district's public schools. In this particular case, since we are in the budget presentation, I would ask that everyone be restricting their comments related to the budget. The chair of the meeting, after a warning, reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected because it constitutes true threats that are likely to provoke a violent reaction and cause a breach of the peace. I don't foresee any need for that. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the chair before or after the meeting. All remarks will be addressed through the chair. Comments made during the public comment portion of the meeting do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Narragansett Regional School District Committee. So if you wish to speak tonight, please do make sure that your name is signed up there. And the space to do so is right in this row behind the TV, just to the left or the right of the camera. And so I would open up the floor. It just right in front of where you were, yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, Liz Toth, Bay Road, Templeton. So I'm gonna start really short. First of all, yes, education is very important. Taking care of our kids is exceptionally important. And the school does an awesome job. The problem we have, of course, is funding. And the request, as I understood it, for the board, for the school committee, is not 3.8%. It was 2.5%. That wasn't just for Templeton. That was the overall budget. To state that these are cuts is really disingenuous. They're not cuts. It's like you go to your boss and say, hey, boss, I want a $10 an hour raise. And the boss comes back and says no. And then you go and complain about it saying, well, I got cut by $10. You didn't give me $10. So, you know, yes, we need to find a way of taking care of people. Yes, we do need to take care of this. But, you know, how many, like how many more ELA students do you have percentage increase, 50%? Well, what is that? 1 to 2, 2 to 10, 2 to 4, what is it?
Do you
Okay.
mean EL?
Yeah, ELA, yeah.
No, ELA is English Language Arts. I
Okay.
think you mean EL.
Yes.
I'm talking about the where it's a percentage
English
increase,
learners,
huh?
English learners.
Yes.
Yeah,
Was it from what?
I'm gonna pull that
Numbers.
for you right now.
okay. I realize I'm saying something in front of this committee that you don't like hearing. We have elderly in town that literally, depending upon how high the budget goes up every year, are going to lose their houses, which means they're going to end up going to basically families move in when the elderly move out. Yes, we need to find a way of closing the gap, but calling these cuts is really inappropriate because it's a budget that you're asking for. It's not like it's coming off of last year's numbers. Then I agree, it's a cut. The last thing is there's got to be a better way of being able to take care of these fundings to meet the needs of both the communities involved and also the students. I don't want to see anybody losing their job from the school system. I really don't. That's not why I'm standing here. There's got to be another way of taking a closer look at the budget. Thank you.
To answer your question, we ended last year with 12 EL students. As of December, we have 27. 20 of those received direct services, 7 are on monitoring.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. I don't disagree with you, Ms. Toth, about the idea of I ask for something, and if we don't do it, there that's a cut. I don't disagree with that. In this case, though, we already have these staff members. And we already have these positions, and they're going to be cut. There's the difference. So it's not like we're asking and not getting. We have, and we're going to have to cut. That's a difference.
Anyone else would like to speak this evening?
Middle of this coming. Signing.
I did, I'll sign your piece of paper.
Okay. Candace Graves, 90 Lake Road, Templeton. I just have a couple of things. One, last year was the first time, and I don't know, a decade, that the sports were put in to the budget, so. That's something in 2024, that's why it wasn't on it, so that's a difference. Last year, you guys tried it. And then the nursing, I've been seeing, I don't know if it's true or not, but doctors and stuff, they were moving into the part where a student can visit online in the school building with a doctor. I don't know if you have that option or not. I don't know if it's helpful or not. And then the only thing I just really was looking at was could in your presentation explain what the additional appropriation row in the income sheet where it says additional appropriation. If I could get a clarification on that. On those numbers. In case,
Production is.
I just wanted to clarify what those, if you could explain a little bit.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
So the minimum contribution that you see on for Templeton and Phillipston, that number is set by the state. The additional appropriation is monies that the towns give us over what the state says that they have to.
And that usually comes through overrides or other means in the years. Past years, just not always overrides. It could be just in general or just. The other question, there were a couple others. I'll let you handle the sports question. I'll handle that's telehealth, I think that you're referring to.
Yeah.
That's.
Saving.
Well, I don't know, well, it's a savings for the parents. So, optimally, the student comes in, says, I don't feel good, they get online and they're able to diagnose with a nurse practitioner. Of course, all permissions, this just doesn't happen, willy-nilly. With all the permissions, and they're able to actually prescribe and do whatever, so that way it doesn't take work. Have to come get student X and then go to the health center, try to find, someplace to go. It doesn't cost certainly anything for us because it's run through Hayward Hospital Telehealth. And it's actually, again, a great service to kiddos who utilize it. The athletics, I don't know exactly the question.
Athletics is funded through the general fund. It's funded through school choice and athletic revolving. So last year we took in, did away with the user fees for all the extracurricular, not just athletics. So by doing that, then the school choice had to pick up more of the supplies, which the revolving used to cover. Because the price of busing is going up and the transportation to games is going to be too high, athletic user fees are going back in, and the difference is going back to the revolving account.
Just a follow up, well, you can run the math on the athletic fees to make sure it balances out. Because things have changed price wise over even just last year. Whatever you're gonna use that athletic fee, it has to be able to balance out. Whatever you're asking, if you have reduced lunch, free lunch, you're not using that platform anymore. But you're gonna have to evaluate based on kids who can't pay for a sport or kids who can pay half. And then what it actually costs at the end of what you're using the money for, they'll have to balance that out and run those numbers. If you're using it for referees, umpires, you're gonna have to run a whole year worth of sports and figure out the bottom line for your fees based on each sport.
Well, we can look at our past history,
Yeah,
to gauge a starting spot.
okay.
So that's what we'll do, and it really all depends on how many kids actually sign up for each sport.
That's the
So-
reason why you put it out in FY 25. But if you're having a deficit reason, you're going to have to make sure that you run those numbers, you're gonna be back with a problem.
We're not running a deficit, and when you what also goes into the athletic revolving is when you come to the games and you pay a fee. That gate receipt goes in there as well, and again, that varies because if we are people that are hosting the Thanksgiving game here, our gate fee is much lower. Florida holds it that year, so there's a lot of factors that go into it.
And sponsorship, if a business wants to help with that, if they sponsor, you can help with the cost of some individual children that could not afford it or something.
We do have people call and ask and say, I would like to give you a donation to put towards student field trip or student user fee or whatever.
Okay, and then you'll be able to balance that with the amount we ask for the user, with the money number.
I'm gonna pause this conversation. It's a great conversation. I certainly encourage you to get in touch with central office if you want to continue it, but I just want to make sure that we're not getting into too much of a Q&A situation.
I promise I'll keep it 3 minutes or less. Tim Toth, speaking as a citizen taxpayer, town of Templeton. I want to start off, I went home after the presentation in front of the select board and the advisory committee in Templeton last night. And sitting here with the tri-boards last month. And I did watch your first budget presentation because I was trying to just get caught up. I commend you on the comment, and yes, the data points. There are multiple state websites were down today because I went trying to go back and reclaim the numbers of the ESSER funds. Part of the problem we're seeing were the ESSER funds. It caused a divide. For those that don't remember, ESSER was a pass-through through the communities that came to us from the federal Department of Education. I was serving as the chair of the Templeton Select Board at the time. It was a no-brainer, because if I said no, and if the board said no, it got turned back to the federal government. That was no bueno. We took it, we handed it over, but we immediately saw it was building a gap. Then ESSER 2 rolled in and ESSER 3 behind it. That is a big portion of this $1 million a year, because all we did was we kicked that can down the road. But we never came up with a plan on how we were going to close the gap. Well, here we are in the out years, and we're seeing the results of what happened. I can try to help you fix it. I don't have an answer. And I wish I could have pulled the darn data points down, but Commonwealth of Massachusetts, yay. I have one other comment, and I heard you say more with less. I love the term and I hate the term. I'm retired military. We learned in the 1980s. That phrase doesn't work. The military abandoned that phrase in the 80s. Unfortunately, the civil sector hasn't figured it out yet. We need to get there though. You cannot do more with less. It's counterintuitive. So it's a nice concept, but the reality is you're only going to get less with less. Having recently retired, and this year I'm giving up my paramedic certifications in their entirety. I worked in this town when we cut police, fire, DPW. We were on the verge of closing our library. We were on the verge of closing our senior center. I know what it was like to not have an officer responding when we were going out on the ambulance to a motor vehicle accident, a domestic violence call. It wasn't fun. This town has endured that once. We were on the verge of enduring it twice. So yes, it does take a village, but we've taken the cuts one time already. We cannot continue to do that. And
This is not a problem that's unique to the school district. This
oh no, it's not.
department in our community. We're growing, which is a good thing. And that's what I mean by making sure that when we talk about the challenges in the budget, that we don't talk about them as just the school's challenges. This is something that our community needs to figure out. What that means, I don't know. I am looking to other communities that are heading in the right direction for some guidance. Everyone keeps reassuring me that, you know, if you can just get your committees to talk to each other, that you'll head in the right direction. And it is true. The issue is right now, it doesn't feel so good between all of the departments in town. And that's what happens when you're faced with cuts. My ask is that we continue to foster those relationships between our committees. That we continue to work together in a positive way. So that we're not faced with having to talk about cuts. You know, that we're not faced with not having access to the services that we need in town, so that we can be safe, so that we can provide our students everything that they need. But over and over again, it feels like a school problem, even when people come to us and say, I don't know how to help the school. It's not just a school problem. It's a community problem that can only be solved by the community.
I'm a slightly different critter. This is a problem affecting everybody in the state,
It-
all 351 cities and communities. It used to be called the Mass Municipal Association. We did an annual trade show. The last 2 years, it's 351 Connect, which is actually a more appropriate. We can go up to the 30,000-foot view. This affects all 50 states in our great country. We are not unique. We really aren't. Is there a solution that we can put our finger on and say, there, we fixed it? No, we're not there yet. I wish I could wave the magic wand and say, poof, we're good. I don't have that answer. I wish I did.
Madam Chair, there's something actually Mr. May brought up yesterday. This is just for information, because I don't remember the number. What is the telephone budget, the total this year, projected?
We're coming in just around 10 million.
Something very interesting last night, something you always know when you hear it differently. The Narragansett Regional School District budget is larger than both member towns. Which is not always necessarily the way, you know, in terms of dependent on stuff. So I think that you're right, it's gonna require, when coming to Toth's point, is that we're gonna have to figure this out. In general, because the 2.5 to us, like for the district, which we, you know, dwarf necessarily the both budgets, it's. When you look from a math perspective, it's more, right? It's more because we're bigger. I'm only saying that because there is a fundamental issue with that piece. Just to the point about having to have more open dialogue, and again, not being a school problem, we just happen to be bigger. Because we encapsulate both towns, or at least the children, right? So it was just, I just was writing this down because I think that is also something that's going to have to take place as we.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Eric Diamond. I live at 96 Baldwinville Road. Here under a lot of capacities. But first, before I get to my comments, I had a couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to speak to the co-chair for talking about the teacher salaries coming in line with the surrounding districts. And that is definitely something that we were hoping would happen, that we could see what we are paid as in line with our fellow colleagues around the region, and specifically even the neighboring towns. One of the questions I had that maybe the superintendent can answer, Madam Chair, is the state has a net school spending number for every district. What is our FY26 net school spending number? I'm gonna ask my little wife to write it down as I say, because I don't have a pen on me. Well, I do, but I can't write and hold everything at the same time.
I'm gonna have to go to that. You have another question so I can find.
Yes.
Find.
What is that number with the cut budget? What happened? Has the school ever explored hiring and controlling its own busing? And I can say it because I'm just a citizen of the town. to break the cabal that controls that pricing that is obviously fixed.
I have not explored it with them. Explored it? No. What I will share is that that has come up in a couple of the chairs meetings. And the discussion essentially been. Would our member towns be able to front the cost of all those buses that it would take? Plus the building to house the buses. And there was a very quick retreat from the conversation. It's the way that I will share that. Because it was that those upfront costs. Worcester has just done this.
Okay.
It'll be an interesting, much bigger district, so not comparable, but it will be interesting to watch that. It's a great question to try to look at other regional districts that have done this. I don't know those off the top of my head right now, but like I said, it has absolutely come up at several chairs meetings, and
Okay.
like I said, there was, as we went through, okay, well, this and this and this would be the upfront costs of doing that, plus we would have to staff those buses, we would have to put bus drivers on those
Right.
buses, we would have to get insurance for
Yep.
those buses and that company, et cetera. And there was a lot of question marks as to whether that would truly be a savings or maybe over the long term, but we didn't know if those long-term cost savings, whether or not there'd be the tolerance for the upfront high cost.
And maybe advocating for state legislative action would be a quicker and cheaper path
Yes.
than our towns and us coming up with a bus company to fix something maybe the state could
Yeah,
fix.
I wanna be clear, no closed doors, all great ideas should be on the table,
Yep.
But that was where we netted out in that recent conversation.
Yep, okay, so the required net school spending number is 20,521,967.
So
Part B, go ahead.
can you just put that presentation back up?
It's
Not
on the
the
fifth
fifth
slide.
It's
It's on slide 5 as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we just wanted to,
yes.
so what was the track one?
Subtract the amount that we are.
Right, what is the
Well,
cut?
the requirements of spending them doesn't change.
Right.
So, but we can do the calculation, I'll just need to subtract the 8.
Okay,
But that number doesn't change, still required.
Yes, right.
That number comes from the chapter 70 that the state gives us, plus the minimum contributions that each town is required to pay. So those three numbers is what makes up your net school spending, and that doesn't change. You could cut that to zero, you're still required to spend that.
That's what's
And you'll
funny.
get in trouble.
And this is like that.
Yeah, so the chapter 70, that 13 million at the very top. And then the Templeton minimum and the Phillipston minimum contributions, the 5.9 and the 1.5, you add those together. That is the $20 million net school spending figure that the state says we're required to spend. And our budget for last year was 24. So we are over our net school spending.
Yeah.
Not all categories figure in, but we are well within. We're not in danger of getting in trouble from the state, even when.
so Madam Chair, I had some comments, one as a parent and resident of the town, taxpayer. Two, as a teacher who's an employee of the district, and maybe for the school committee, most importantly, third, as the president of the teachers union. So my comments as a parent are, when I look at the cuts that the superintendent's proposed to you, I see a lot of services to kids. So I'm gonna think about it from Emma's point of view. If she needs to stay after for extra help next year, and I'm a parent that can't, luckily for her, my car's in the parking lot. But if I'm a parent that can't bring her home, she doesn't get that extra help. If she needs reading in the middle school, she's now lost that access to a reading specialist. If she has health issues or psychological issues that she needs to see someone, there might be one less person to do the evaluation and work with her to help her out. That bothers me as a parent. she would lose her access to several UAs with the superintendent's proposal. She's gonna lose access to language. She's gonna lose access to digital literacy, which, like, I don't know how you want to prioritize digital literacy. She may lose access to other UAs depending on her schedule, which could include things like the engineering program, which she's interested in. It could include things like music. It could include her physical education. All of those there's unified arts classrooms are now going to swell in the middle school because you've taken 3 people out of the middle school. So those unified arts are going to bloom now. They're going to get very large at an age when students are not as pliable as they are. You know, when I start my morning, just so you know, I started with 17 and 18-year-olds. I started with seniors, and they're talking about their paycheck and the gas in their car and their college back. But imagine you're in the middle school and now these classrooms have grown. The UAs are limited. So I want the school committee to consider that from a parent's point of view. When she moves to the high school, I'm concerned about her college and career readiness, right? I want her to be able to enter the workforce or enter college prepared to go to those things. As a teacher, I look at these cuts that the superintendent's proposed, and I think about what this will do to affect this robust education we provide the whole child, right? So now that's limited to some degree, the deeper these cuts go. And it may not affect someone like myself that teaches social studies, teaches history, but every little piece you take away from that big picture is going to affect that child. And then as the president of the teachers union, we are looking at the services provided to these children taking a hit. When I look at the overall cuts the superintendent's proposed, I think there's room there for more administrative cuts and less for cuts from both teachers and support staff, including paras and others. I think when you cut from the folks that provide the direct service face to children, that's going to have, of course, the most painful impact in your district. And if there are ways to cut that you could save 2 or 3 of those teachers, then we as a union think those cuts should be made instead of what the superintendent's proposed. That only includes, from what I can see, 1 administrative cut to that budget. And then finally, as far as our role as a membership, we want to really partner with some of these legislative pieces. We're starting a program among our membership to start contacting these legislative officials and pushing them on a number of pieces of legislation that affect rural schools. And we want to partner with the school committee and partner with the towns to say, we've got to hit these folks with our emails and our phone calls and our presence and say, you've got to start addressing the needs of these rural central Massachusetts schools instead of only paying attention to those schools that are around the Beltway. We feel like if we can start this public push to these legislators and say, hey, you need to start listening to us, we may be able to make an impact on the transportation bill that's coming up that maybe people don't know about, that's going to affect regional transportation, or funding from some of the legislative things that they've done with taxation that are no longer, I don't know if you guys know, the Fair Share Act. Where's the money going for Fair Share this year? It's going to the state's transportation budget. It's not coming to schools. That literal bill was made to fund schools partly, and now it's not. So we want you to know that as a membership, we are going to partner with you, and we are going to use our power and our voice as citizens of Massachusetts to start aggravating the legislator to do something for us and pay attention to us. So those will be my comments, and I do hope you consider maybe making some adjustments to the superintendent's cuts as you finalize your budget cuts tonight. Thank you.
I chose not to speak during my time. Mostly because person sitting next to me did such a good job of speaking. There is one small piece that I want to say. The first of which is to thank all of the teachers and the staff who took the time to show up tonight. I know this is time away from your families, time away from working on all those things that bleed into after school hours. Time away from dinner and you're all really hungry, I know. Sometimes I hope the mic doesn't pick up my growling stomach up here. I want to thank those members of the community who also took the time to come to this evening. As Danielle mentioned, this is often an empty room. I'm very used to speaking to a camera and not used to speaking to so many people. I'd like to think there's this many people watching. Numbers don't really pan out that way, but we'll pretend that they do. I'd like to tell my kids I'm on TV. It makes them very interesting. What I hope folks took away from this evening is that budgeting for schools is so complicated. I feel really discouraged by the number of people making very public comments about this school district inappropriately budgeting for our schools. I don't speak on Facebook for two reasons. One, because frankly, I've learned that people are not interested in the facts that I have to share. And two, because it is not within the purview of my role as chair, because no one would be able to know from one moment to the next whether Jennifer Smith was speaking as chair of the school committee or whether Jennifer Smith was speaking as a parent or as a member of the community. And so when I do post, it is always with links to resources that are publicly posted by the school. What I would ask is that when you see discussions on Facebook about school budgets, often those come from a space of having already made a conclusion without necessarily having access to all the information. Not because it's not publicly available, but because it's a lot. It is a lot. I am sitting here and I am in my 4th year as a school committee member and I am still learning. So what I would ask is that people stay curious. I would ask that you suspend judgment in favor of learning. That is literally our mission as a school, learning. And so I think we're in a very tough space. These aren't decisions I want to make this evening, but I need to make them. As does everyone else who has a seat at this table, and they are hard decisions. Sat with a lot of these fine folks around a negotiating table earlier this year, and I have so much respect and awe to the dedication that you give in your classrooms, to the dedication that you give to the students for those one-on-one paras or for the cafeteria workers. And what I promise is that we will continue to push for this district no matter what is voted tonight. We will continue to advocate for what is right. And we will continue to put out information to help correct the misinformation that is spreading. And we will continue to try to do so in a way that is accessible because, like I said, it took me 3 years to kind of wrap my arms around school budgets. So I really want folks to understand that school budgets are not simple. And that it is misleading to make statements that there are fundamental issues with our budgets if we are asking for these increases every year. Stay curious. Peace. And thank you for entertaining my talk. On that note, I'm going to close the budget hearing. And we're going to move forward with our budget actions. First of all, we do not need to invoke the rule of necessity. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the rule of necessity is brought in if there are, I'm going to say, conflicts of interest related to voting on the budget. which we do not have that issue at present today. And so what we'll need to do is that there are two budget options in front of us. There's a level service. And there is, well, it's dubbed on here is the Templeton 2.5%. So that's what I'll refer to it as, because I've got a lot of information to reference. I'm gonna remind folks of the pros and cons here. Level service maintains everything we've worked to build over the past 2 years. I agree with Dr. Cassavant when he says that these are cuts, because they are cuts to services that we have built up. That is what the Templeton 2.5%, but I also would like to remind everyone of something. The town warrants are closed. There is no space in this moment for a 2.5% override. Which means that should we move our full level service budget forward, and should it get voted on town floor, that the town would be faced with having to make over $800,000 in cuts from other services across our towns. We've heard rumors that could include the library or other things, which would also be a devastating loss to our communities. I would also remind folks that should that budget get voted down, we go into a 1/12 situation. And knowing what the temperature is at the moment, I don't have a lot of confidence that that would end favorably for us. And so I'm looking you all in the eye because you deserve that. To know that this is a really tough decision and a really tough place to be in, mostly for you. And no pressure. We do need to vote. And so I would open it up to school committee for either discussion on how we want to vote, or to propose a vote, because I know the vote that our hearts want may be very different from the vote that is necessary. Yes.
If we were to vote level service, it goes to the town, does that give, I understand that we can never put higher than that, but does that give us the opportunity for negotiation between the towns and the school committee at that point in time?
So that. Let me think about this for a minute. So. The school committee itself, the body itself. Can amend the number, but only lower. Ultimately, I'm going to turn to Mr. Tove. You know, I'm thinking that anything can happen on the floor, any amendment or anything can be proposed at the floor, like from a resident. So what I mean is that there are really two different questions here. Like the school committee is bound by what that you folks, the school committee can do. When I say anybody, but what can happen on town floor is what can happen on town floor. So I don't know how to answer that question, but in terms of negotiate, no.
Yeah.
The number will go,
So-
the number will go.
So let me, so we have in the past voted through a level service budget and then received more information from the town and made decisions to then
Yeah.
subsequently lower our budget. What I would say is I'm not anticipating in this moment that different information is going to be coming from the town, is how I would answer your question. I'm not envisioning, based on what I've heard said to me in the multi-board meeting, listening to advisory meetings and select board meetings, is that sitting in chairs meetings, is that we have gotten no indication that there is any men in red capes coming in with an alternate plan.
I mean, so I guess the reason why I asked this question is right, because I really especially as an educator, and I support that the students in these towns need to be properly educated and financed by that. I also do think that it's a larger problem, in terms of, you're fighting a 5-year problem of these towns have received a 2.5%, when really inflation's been well over 3%. And I guess the only reason why I asked that is because I would like the opportunity to work with the towns, as I do think it's a larger community problem to do so. And I also know that I can't vote on a lower budget and get higher at that point in time. And so I guess that's the reason why I put that out.
And those are great points for consideration. What I would say is that a lot of work has been done with the towns to try to figure out where we need to be. I would say that our opportunities to advocate for and look for something different is at this point an FY 26, or sorry, an FY 27 conversation. That's the impression I'm getting, is that I think there is understanding and appreciation from the town that this continual 2.5% is not doing what we needed to do, that all of our services are suffering. The decision was made not to go for an override this year. The warrants were closed. And so what we've been told is that stabilization funds were used last year. They don't foresee using those again this year. And so, I mean, we all have to vote the way we need to vote, but I would say I do not foresee a situation where the town is coming back, either town is coming back to us with, I'm gonna say, call them miracle monies, because I don't know what else to call them.
Understood.
All right, I didn't quite understand. You said something like hypothetically, if we voted on one budget or another and like the override, something happened with the override, then like $800,000 would be cut from rentals.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
yep, no, that's no problem. Budgets are complicated, so let me help you, let me go through that again. So essentially, when a school committee can vote whatever budget we need to vote for, and then that gets put on to the town warrants. So onto the Phillipston town warrant and onto the Templeton town warrant. And then the citizens at large have a chance to vote yes for that number or no. If they vote yes for that number and it is above what those towns budgeted, then they would have to cut services from elsewhere in order to make that budget match up. If they vote no to that larger amount, then what you hope happens is that an alternate number gets settled on the floor. But at that point, that number can be determined or suggested by citizens at large, and is no longer within the purview of the school committee. The other option is that if it gets voted no, then it can go into what's called 1/12, which is essentially where the state steps in and there's special meetings and whatnot. But you would do a better job of describing 1/12.
I'll just use last year as just last year. So last year, through the process, the town of Templeton said, you know what, we're gonna, meaning at the select board level, okay, at this level, so we're gonna give you $400,000 more. I'm rounding if I'm off, please forgive me. We're gonna do it this way, right? So that made the warrant, all of that made the warrant, so there was the budget, our budget included this $400,000 that the town was going to give us more, okay? Well, it made to the warrant, it went to the town, right, on the town floor at the meeting. So that was discussed. So 2 votes had to happen. One, if they were going to move money from the
Stabilization.
thank you, the stabilization account, that had to happen first. Okay, so that got appropriated, and then the vote for the school budget happened, okay? So the decision to give, if I'm gonna make it just it plain, the decision to even consider giving more money to the school from the town of Templeton's perspective happened truly initially at the select board level. Okay, that's what they voted to at least put it to the people. It had to be voted in once we went to town meeting. In this case, there is no ops, right? There is no extra money or whatever, how else you want to put it. So Templeton, again, I'm not just picking on Templeton, just either town said, look, we don't have any other money to give you. We're not going to do a 2.5 override. That's not even up for debate, right? Because it didn't make the warrant. It didn't even get considered. So there is no mechanism, right, to raise or to give funds other than if it passes on the floor, it happens. Okay, and so now then Templeton, again, we keep using just Templeton, but now they've got to find somewhere in their existing budget $884,000, which means a cut to whatever, how many services, and I don't pretend to know, but it would be fairly biblical, right? I don't know what it would be, but it would be a lot. So we went into last year hoping that the folks would vote affirmative in both towns to that increase, and they did. There is no such offer in that case. And so in essence, and if I'm off, Mr. Toth, please correct me and say, I do not want to be wrong here. What the towns are asking us is just to consider or to vote on a budget that's 2.5% over last year's monies. That's in essence what is being asked. And so that is what you're considering.
In essence, that is correct.
Okay, I want to make sure I don't want to speak that far.
I'd like to get a motion on the floor.
Sorry, was there a moment?
Just asking me to give you a second language.
I'll give you a second.
Can I ask another question, Jenna?
Yes.
Sorry, just so many questions.
Yeah.
Because I just, there's a lot of things that Mr. Ivan, that I actually wrote down here as well, that resonated with me. And I just want to make it publicly aware, it is not this committee's job to decipher cuts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
We vote on the budget and then
Yeah,
it is the folks who have all the knowledge of because we don't have the knowledge of the students' needs, et cetera. It would not fall within our authority. Certainly, we can express our hopes, opinions, but at the end of the day, those cuts are not up to us. What I will say is, I know many different scenarios were considered. None of them, some of them made me more nauseous than others. And while I don't love what's at the table today, as they were planning and contacted me to say, what do you think? It's not the worst plan I saw.
no, that's fine. I had some things written down here that I agreed with some of the statements that he made, and I just wanted to make sure that the public was aware that that is the case.
I make a motion to move forward and vote with the level service budget of $1,686,978.
Your level service budget would be 26,168. Oh, the increase, okay.
Yes.
So moved.
Just clarify. That'd be our original number.
That's the original search. 26,168,110. By Daniel. Questions or comments? There are no questions or comments. I can move that to a roll call. Okay. Sean,
Yes.
Chrissy? No. Danielle? Yes. Heather? Jack?
Yes.
I have to say no. That was. So that's no, 4 no's, 3 yeses. Is there anyone who'd like to put an alternate motion on the floor? As that first vote failed. Then what I would propose is I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote and certify the amount of $25,285,000 to $285,203. So I'll repeat that for clarity. $25,285,203 for the FY 26 budget, which for clarity, since there's a lot of numbers going on in here, would be the Templeton 2.5%. So moved. Motion by Heather and a second by Hank. Any questions or comments?
Sucks.
Yep. Ditto. Yeah, I'm going to look you all in the eye again. I would not be doing this if I did not think that it would be hugely detrimental to both our towns and the services that all residents rely on. I need you to hear me on that, because this is not what we want to be doing. But we have an obligation to our towns just as much as we have an obligation to our students, our staff, teachers, or administrators. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. I will again do a roll call vote. Hank?
Aye.
Sean?
No.
Chrissy? Danielle?
No.
Heather? Yes. Jeff?
No.
And I say yes. So that passes. From here, I'm going to proceed through the various votes required to close out the budget. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $13,040,917 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the Chapter 70 aid from the Governor's House 1 budget submission. Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Roll call, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle. No. Heather. Jeff.
No.
And I say yes, so that passes 4-3. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $604,769 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the Chapter 71 aid from the Governor's House 1 budget submission.
So.
Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, yes, Jeff. And I say yes, so that passes 4-3. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $35,471 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the charter school reimbursement from the FY 26 cherry sheet estimates. Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff. And I say yes, so that passes 4-3. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $545,000 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the FY 24 certified excess and deficiency. Motion by Hank. Second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff. And I say yes, so that passes 4-3. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $200,000 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the FY 26 Medicaid receipts. Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff. And I say yes, so that passes 4-3. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the assessment amount to Templeton in the amount of $8,787,299. Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff. And I say yes, so that passes 4-3. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the assessment amount to Phillipston in the amount of $2,071,747.
So.
Motion by Hank. Second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff. And I say yes, so that passes 4-3. That ends our budget actions. What I will say is folks who want to see things change in this town, we've got to hear your voices. We've got to see you at these meetings. Folks, we can't just hear from people who are on Facebook. And so I am really dedicated to working the chairs across our towns so that we can all work together towards a solution that funds all the services that these towns needs. Technically, appearances come next, but I can see that our student representative came and went. As I'm sure she had other commitments for the evening. NDEA, you have a space if you'd like to use it.
Yes, absolutely. So with that number, presented to the towns, it's going to equal $883,000 of cuts to the school district. More than half of which, teachers union will bear the burden of. And once again, I think you as a school committee and as a voter who supports you as a school committee thinks that you have to have a way to put pressure on the superintendent. Even though he is the person that presents those cuts, and I'm obviously gonna put pressure on him as well, to make sure those cuts impact students the least. And the services we provide as professionals employed by you for those students. And so I'll make it very clear to him, and our union will make it very clear to him that we want to see a fair share of those cuts that are going to hurt our school come from all different parts and not just the teaching staff and even more importantly, among the teaching staff, the middle school, which I think is also something that you guys should put some pressure on him to consider as well, especially considering what the class sizes are going to do once he pulls those unified arts people. Other than that, I think you guys are taking a course that's a difficult one to take. It cannot be easy. I mean, I've been as long as many of you have, and I'm kind of tired of it too. Always doing this. In Templeton, and we need to do something to change how our town perceives its responsibility, its social responsibility, and that's a bigger question. But I'd be glad to work with you all and have how to approach that bigger question of changing the social mood of the town. I always say to the superintendent, I want them all. I want police at my house at night. I want fire if I have an emergency. I want my library open. I want the senior center to be fully funded. Heck, I want it to grow. I'm willing to pay my fair share and more to make my town robust in its services. We need to think about how we can get that message out to no fault of people at town meeting, those of us that go. Where is it? At town meeting, right? It's like 80 of us. There's thousands of registered voters that don't have a say. So maybe we can sit down at our LMC and start talking about what we can do as a school community to really promote support of our town services, both towns, Phillipstown. Thank you.
We have a lot of big business on the agenda for this evening, not just budget.
Madam Chair, I'm going to defer to Hank. I'm sorry, Mr. Mason, but I was feverishly searching through a vote, a budget vote. I believe that's to be 2 minutes. My notes, I don't know, that is a question that I have.
Always been a
Going
majority.
back to, is there always been a majority? I only ask because I'm sure people are Googling fiercely this one. Our defunct regional agreement, as you know, is circa 1950, depending on which one, most.
Involvement of Templeton for the regional school committee budget to be approved, it requires a 2/3 vote of the regional school committee.
Well,
And then
that's
a 2/3
AI,
vote.
but so hold on.
Okay.
We
The next one.
haven't passed it in a while, I just want to make sure that.
That's been a while.
Section C.
Is supposed to be like, other members shall annually determine the.
I apologize, Madam Chair, I should have, running feverishly to make sure before I interrupted.
No, so it doesn't say in our policy.
In 16, Mass General Law. I believe you. Regional District School Committee by a 2/3 vote of all its members shall annually determine the amount necessary to be raised after deducting the age which districts is pursuant to section 15G to maintain and operate the district school services.
Afraid we're at a stalemate and we need to pass a budget.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Wanted to make sure before I said.
Doesn't help to.
Better now than trust me. That doesn't give us much.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just gonna pass this button? Okay. I'm gonna have to, I do not see anything in our policies, and I do not see anything in a quick search of the regional agreement. But so mass law will trump that, so. My friends. Math is not that big. I mean, yeah, don't try, yeah. I've got two math teachers at this table. I'm in trouble if I don't do my math correctly. I mean.
Yeah, that's my next question, Jennifer. It's based on need or based on set?
It is based on that.
How many feet there are, how many feet there are in the
Yeah. Oh, we're getting, I understand everyone is having a lot of conversations for understandable reasons. But we're being informed that the cameras are picking it up and they're on, and folks online won't be able to hear. So. I'm sorry, Sean, you
So my
were,
question is it based on the number of people that are up here, or is it based on the number of seats on the board?
so even
Because that
if,
math is gonna track differently.
even if it was based on the number of seats on the board, the aid human who physically does not exist in this moment would be counted as an abstain. Because they are not here to vote. So, and at which point, if they're counted as an abstain,
Check this council, I suppose, but either way, it still doesn't pass.
the math
No.
still doesn't math. Okay, there are certainly situations where so there are three options at hand. One of those is that we reconsider level service and redo that vote, and if folks should wish to change their vote, that is one possibility. Possibility number two is that we reconsider the Templeton 2.5%. See what those votes are. Possibility number three is that someone makes an alternate motion. Did I miss any, Hank? I saw you holding up four fingers, so I didn't know if I missed a fourth option.
Fourth option.
All right,
Go back to the finance subcommittee or come back next month. Because the town already got there. Whether we have to do it before.
April 15th is the last day.
Right, so. You still have
March 30th.
we have to certify by March 30th. Our next,
Yeah, so we still have time to come back. Have another discussion.
between
At
now
the
and March
finance.
30th.
Yeah. Next week's Tuesday. We meet the 30th.
Well, if we have to certify this, we also have to, we'd have to meet with finance, and then we'd also have to meet as a school committee.
It's the fourth option.
All right, it's a fourth option.
Proposed fourth option.
I was gonna say, are you looking for, I propose the fourth option if we're exploring motions.
My concern with the fourth option is getting everyone's schedule, getting quorum at all those meetings. You know, getting everyone back into this room. etc. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but if we could please remember that within those 10 days, there is a weekend. And the state does not allow me to include the weekend when I post meetings. They don't count as days. So if I needed to post a finance and facilities meeting, I would need to post it this evening for Tuesday. Cause I'd have to post it with 3 days
Oh, right.
notice. I am past the time of day that we would have the meeting. So we would meet on Tuesday, and I would also have to post this evening for next Thursday. Am I still within my?
They're supposed to present in Phillipston next Thursday.
Really, and we're presenting to Phillipston next Thursday. As much as it feels more comfortable to postpone, I don't see that as the most viable option. I think we either need another motion on the table, or we have to have a very real discussion about what's at stake here. And I will tell you, I will be honest with you, this is why I voted the way I voted. I wanted a level service budget, that's why we pushed forward with a level service budget.
We all did.
We all did. That said, I don't see different information coming from our towns. We have already been told by, not Phillipston themselves, but the former. Oh gosh, what was Melanie's former title of Phillipston? Assistant town administrator, that her look at Phillipston's books said they could not afford another override this year because they already did one last year.
Thing is, it feels good to vote yes. You have to look at the long-term ramifications, what would happen to the town. And we have to play the long game. We have to do what's good for the town and our school in the long run, not just this year.
Yeah, and to be clear, I voted yes, based on the premise that, I mean, as you already said, we want a level service budget. I don't dream of getting a level service budget, but then perhaps the towns have an opportunity to reflect and we have an opportunity to work together to come up with something in the middle where it's either impacts both the town and the school. And I understand that we don't understand what that number looks like right this second, but if by pushing these meetings, perhaps those conversations do get an opportunity to take place.
Last year, I had an essence that would happen, that we would get a favorable response, and that's why I pushed to the budget at that time, the way that it was written. This time around, I do not have that. You're just taking my word for it. I totally understand that. I'm the one who's sitting in those chairs meetings. But I did not, and Dr. Cassidy, I invite you, or Danielle, I invite you to speak as well, as you both were in the chairs meetings as well. I got no faith.
I just thought we had a relatively healthy, I'm gonna call it an all boards meeting, but I don't know if that's what we're defining it as when the advisory board and the select board were here. Yeah, thank you. Wonderful. And I did think that was, healthy. As it is, the school is our community's school, both communities. That opportunity to give us.
Madam Chair, I was just, again, I was there at the meeting last night. They did not, I would say, signal. Anything other than the 2.5. I'll be very candid. I've received 3 emails today already, in various formats, saying the same thing. Again, I just want to make sure that we remember. I just want to make sure that we understand that we have gone down this road before. There's three all district meetings. And they lowered the amount on the floor. Third meeting. I'm gonna say that because that's what happened. Okay? These are not, it's like watching your house burn, quite frankly. You know, kind of these positions that we've worked hard, you know, and we do need. There was someone who said, these, you know, it's between what you need and what you want. Well, I want to be able to have these type of services for kids. Okay, but what I also know is that the last time we went through this, and I'm gonna say, we did not receive much support. At all. And we lost 3 times in a row, got close in the end. Yes, but in the end, they lowered the budget even more. And we had to cut. Right, so I'm gonna say to you that it would be different for me if there was just this outpouring of support. I mean, people sitting there the entire time voting what, you know, what they feel. That did not happen. We lost by at least, you could look, it's all online. And so that is my concern, because I will say we cannot go into 112. If I go into 112, if the district goes into 112, what does that mean? We have to use FY 25 monies. They break it down into 112s, and then they give that to us and to the town too. And we have to make towns plural. And then we have to make do. We are too big to do that. I'm gonna say that. So they know that, everyone knows that. I can't go into an FY with FY 25, that means I'm gonna have to pink slip X. Just in case, because I can't go into a budget year that's not balanced, that's against obviously the law, the rules. So we start getting into some. I'm not, again, I know how I sound, but that's what happened. And people who said we're gonna be there were not, and we got kicked around pretty good. Let's put it there. There's a saying, I won't say it. And so I'm just gonna tell you that everybody's good here until it gets there. And so that, you know, until that changes somehow, or I see better support, I'm gonna tell you, that's how I see it going. And so I'm trying to preserve what I can have. I don't agree with it, of course. I've got, you know, can we talk different cuts? Sure, but they're gonna have to equal $884,000 because they can reduce that number lower. You just heard what the local, what our threshold is. I'm just gonna say it, because that's what happened, and we weren't prepared for that when we went into those meetings. We were, well, it was just, yeah, us left. We were not prepared for what happened to us by that third meeting. So,
Yes, I agree with you. The multi-board, the tri-board meeting was excellent, actually. There was great dialogue, great conversation, lots of participation, which is exactly what you want from a multi-board. I mean, having listened to the every advisory meeting, every select board meeting, sat in the select board meeting last night, had the chairs meetings. While I think everyone, I mean, everyone wants to give everyone the money that they need. There's nobody that doesn't want to give folks the money that they need, but the information I received at all of those was not favorable to level service. And every single one of those, we were being pushed towards a Templeton 2.5%.
So we're not prepared to go into the meetings with a level service budget. Are we prepared to make $882,000 worth of cuts? Okay, are we prepared to do that? So I understand the position of the town. I understand what we're hearing from, okay, and I do appreciate that, okay? We've worked for many years to do this. It's not like we don't know what's coming, okay? We've had these discussions, we've had them open with the towns, okay? Our responsibility at this table here is for the students to do the best for the students. So what I'm hearing now is is what you're telling me, that if we go into this with a level service budget, that's not what's going to be best for the students. So we get cut at the floor. Without support, we get cut at the floor. That is not going to be the best thing.
No, you're right. I mean, yes.
So what we're thinking is that heading it off with $883,000, and then that going to the reduced budget would be better, is what you're saying.
Again, I think it's one of those, you know, would rather use your leg or your arm. I think they're both bad. The fact of the matter is though, it can be worse. And and I'm gonna say this because that's what happened to us last time. I get almost emotional about it because it was horrible, right? Never mind the name calling and all that stuff, whatever. That happens. Like, it was, whatever, yep. So have it on Facebook last night, whatever, who cares? But the fact is that they actually lowered it. And it passed overwhelmingly. And we couldn't stop, we could not stop that trend. And the last thing that was said to me, and I won't mention who said it, it can get worse. So that's when they came back, school committee, again, there's only 4 of us here, who's here, and that's when they voted the lower number. I'm just saying that really happened. Okay? For real. And people who said they're gonna show up didn't. Some people did a lot. So by the way, if you're sitting there going, I was there, we know who was there. We know, right? But there were lots of people who said they were going to be there, and then it was softball games. Oh my God, geez, there was dinner, and they didn't show. And I'm gonna tell you, that happened. And so we actually paid more for that by going that third time because we were told that we were gonna have support. And I gotta tell you, we definitely had more support than we had the first 2 meetings, lost by 7 votes, 6 votes that last time. Okay, and so, yeah, but that's when they lowered it again. So I'm just saying that I don't want it to get worse, for God's sakes, right? I'm worried about that. I don't want to do this at all. But
Well, let me also say, going through the previous budget presentations, we've actually had more in the room here. We have a great turnout tonight, but it's not something that we have regularly.
can I tell you honestly, I'm not even looking at anybody because I don't want to think that I'm looking at them. All right, look at you. Ready? Half these people aren't residents. I know exactly how many residents we had. I knew exactly how many residents we had at those meetings because those lists are public, as you know, and you can pull them and you can count. Guess what? We didn't get that. Okay, I'm not even looking at anybody. Because they're gonna think I'm talking to them and I'm not. Okay, but people who did show sat in the section without any, the non-voter section where I'm at, right? Which is probably the worst place to be, that's right, but anyway, so, but they didn't show. They did. People here, half of them, they're not from town. Yes, there are some, but that's my concern.
And
Just saying.
Yes.
I guess what I said this earlier, so I'm going to repeat it for the sake of repeating it. If the people in this town want to see something different, then that is not a couple of months effort. That's a many months effort. And so my other concern is that even if, I don't know who to look at, but if every person in this audience who is a resident showed up, it still may not be enough because in most of our town meetings, 3% of the town's population makes the decision for 100%. And there are lots of folks who do not know what town government needs and requires. And that is not a knock on the people that show up because God bless them for showing up and getting the job done. But there are lots of folks who don't understand what it takes or understand what it means. And no matter how determined folks are, that is not going to change in 2 months. That's going to take time and energy and rallying and effort. And Facebook is really, really loud in these towns. Let's face it. And right now, if I look at the temperature on Facebook, it is not in favor of level service.
So Madam Chair, let me ask you, if we have a proposed budget on the floor, how are you asking for things?
So we don't have a motion on the floor at the moment.
No.
Didn't pass.
You did pass.
You did?
No, no, because of the 2/3. Yeah,
You're not 2/3, so that was,
so the vote was moot. I could have saved a lot of
sorry.
reading.
All right, so I'll make a motion to, put forth reduced budget of 25,285,203.
25,000,200.
Thank you. Yeah, 25.
$25,285,203. So moved by Jeff,
Second.
second by Shane. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote. Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy,
Aye.
Danielle, Heather, Jeff,
Yes.
and I say yes, so that passes. And we have 2/3 this time. Gotta go through these again, right? Okay, here we go. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $13,040,917 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the Chapter 70 aid from the Governor's House 1 budget submission.
So,
Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Roll call vote, Hank.
Aye. Sorry.
That's okay, Sean.
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff,
yes.
and I say yes, so that passes with a 2/3 vote. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $604,769 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the Chapter 71 aid from the Governor's House 1 budget submission.
So moved.
Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff,
Yes.
and I say yes, so that passes 2/3. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $35,471 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the charter school reimbursement from the FY 26 cherry sheet estimates. Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff,
Yes.
and that passes with a 2/3 vote. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $545,000 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the FY 24 certified excess and deficiency.
So moved.
Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff.
Yes.
And that passes with a 2/3 vote. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $200,000 for the FY 26 budget, which is based on the FY 26 Medicaid receipts.
Moved.
Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff,
Yes.
and I say yes, so that passes with a 2/3 vote. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the assessment amount to Templeton in the amount of $8,787,299.
So moved.
Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call vote, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle,
No.
Heather, Jeff,
Yes.
and I say yes, so that passes with a 2/3 vote. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the assessment amount to Phillipston in the amount of $2,071,747. Motion by Hank, second by Heather. Any questions or comments? Roll call, Hank,
Aye.
Sean,
No.
Chrissy, Danielle, Heather, Jeff, And I say yes, so that passes with a 2/3 vote, and I apologize, folks, that I did not have that information in my head when we did the first round of votes, and you had to hear me do it twice. Thank you, everyone, I know that was exceptionally difficult. I'm going to offer, if the school committee is a quick recess for a moment, a 5-minute recess, just because I know that that was a long session, we'll still have more to do. If we can pick up all the noise. All right, so we have a number of items to get through tonight, and I apologize because I know this is turning into a really long meeting, but this is all really important work to get done as we move forward so that we can make sure that people have access to the right information about what has happened and how we intend to move forward. The first of those is an update around the regional agreement. So Chris, can I hand it over to you?
I'm going to.
Let me see.
Do we have a written copy of it? Or is it all?
I gave you the language, I gave you a copy of the language.
Okay. Well, what I can tell you is that we've created time. Okay. And, because it's taken a long time. And why Mr. Toth is in Jefferson to my left as well. Been 18 very amazing, very long months trying to get to a regional agreement. It took 18 months just to get it to a draft, and we still sit here today without regional agreement. So I've done, thank you, there's nothing down, that's why. Sorry, just dead, so. So ultimately, and I certainly won't read every word of this point, you don't want me to. But what we've created is a timeline of events, not just from my perspective, not just because what I think happened. We took them by the documents and emails, etc., literally, as a backup to show what happened when. Because when we were doing this, I have to tell you that I had forgotten quite a bit. It just because it's been so long since we even talked about it. So that's the regional agreement piece, and it's going to be posted, and we're going to upload it and look at it. I will say as a caveat that, of course, the only documents that I have are the things that either were sent to me or by me. Could there be other information out there that could, strengthen other? I'm sure, but this is just from our.
The only thing I want to add to that before you go into what we're trying to do this evening is some key, just the key, which is that the Regional Amendment Committee passed the regional agreement. From there, it went to DESI and the towns for review. Once DESI came back with their required changes, so think legalese, then the school committee voted on it. And the school committee voted and approved it, and then it got passed to the towns to review and put on their warrants.
I would say this, so from that point on, regardless of what regional agreement that you subscribe to. Okay, whether it be 77, there's the 04 version and all that. You're required to put it on the agenda, you're required to put it on the warrant for consideration by the voters. Okay, that has absolutely been verified above and beyond. So what happened was that Phillipston did not put it on its warrant to be considered by the voters. Okay, Templeton did. It passed, but with an amendment. Okay, there was some confusion about can that actually happen? Well, it did happen. It can happen. They'd rather it not happen on the floor because then the cycle has to start all over again. Okay, so ultimately, I was charged with find out what the process is from here now that we have this. And we were told by DESI, they actually did us a favor. They took the amendment that Templeton put on the floor and they checked it from their angle. Does it meet their muster? Yes, it did. That's good because it's one less step after that we need to do. So that's great. And we've added it to the draft. It's here for your review. Okay, so what's gonna happen is the board will vote, whether they accept it or not. If it's accepted, then what I'm gonna do is say, I'm gonna send it to both towns, but only Phillipston needs to place it on its warrant. Okay, because Templeton has already done that, it's their amendment, okay? There it is, truthfully, because at that point, it's really in the hands of Phillipston to put it on their warrant for consideration.
So what we're trying to do right now is I'm gonna describe it as getting out of the vortex. getting out of the vortex of not moving forward, because it took an incredible, what I will share is that everyone we've spoken to has said that this is unprecedented. Any other regionals where this has happened, and they didn't quite know what to do. And so what we have figured out between DESI as well as consultation with our legal is that we need to vote on that amendment, as Dr. C pointed out. Then it will be sent to Phillipson. Once it's sent to Phillipson, they will again have to decide whether they put it on their warrant or not. What I want to be clear about is if they decide to put it on their warrant, then it will go to their voters for a vote. They can pass it, they can not pass it. It's up to them, and we would figure out actions from there. If they do not put it on their warrant, then it sits outside of the purview of the school committee, as we've discussed with the select board and the advisory board of Templeton, and that the Templeton Select Board and Advisory Board would have to determine what actions to take with Phillipston. So I want to say that just because there's been tons of confusion about what happens next, and so do you feel like we've got our, what was it, if then diagram, better laid out, but in order for us to get out of the vortex, this is why we're bringing this forward to the school committee with Templeton's amendment. So I would entertain a motion to approve the regional agreement as further amended and voted by the town of Templeton at their May 10th, 2023 annual town meeting, which revised the agreement by striking section VIG2 as proposed and replacing it to read 2. All capital costs in town-owned buildings used by the district shall be apportioned among the member towns based on their respective student enrollments in the pre-K through 12 district. Motion by Danielle, second by Heather. Any questions or comments about the motion on the board? Jeff?
I actually would read, I want to read this, where's the second that we're talking about? I'm sorry.
Upload.
I didn't see it.
It's on page 11 of
Page
the
11.
agreement.
Of the,
6G2, yeah.
This is from the agenda.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed?
Post.
Abstained? And I say yes, so that moves forward with a vote of 6 in favor, 1 against. Okay. Our next order of business, Templeton Working Group. So we put this on here because there's been a lot of conversation, and so we wanted to make sure that we had a space, should we need it. What I want to use this space for is to correct some information that's out there, which is that we are actually in favor of a working group to identify options to move the district forward, look at potential cost savings, et cetera. There's been a lot of buzz that we don't like this. What we struggled with was knowing what to tell folks when they called, because it got released on social media, and we were not informed before it was released on social media. So we weren't sure what to tell people. And the way that it was worded, released on social media, was that it was a working group for the town of Templeton to leave the district. Since then, we've had really good conversations to learn that the purpose of the working group is not a foregone conclusion. That the purpose of the working group is really to dig into potential cost savings, multiple different scenarios, including possible expansion of the district, et cetera. So they're looking at a lot of different scenarios. They've asked for some great information from the district. We're fully cooperating with them. And so I wanted to make it very clear that the spirit of the working group is something that we are supportive and actively working with that working group to support. It, again, in the spirit of correcting information, we were never against the working group. It was always just how it came through that created a lot of chaos, you know, calls from John Zlotnick, et cetera. And we didn't have a good response in that moment because we didn't have the chance to prepare. Now that we understand and we've been able to get more information on it, I think this is a great way for folks to get more informed, learn more about, you know, districts. And we have, you know, from the information they've requested to date, we've been able to work towards fulfilling that.
And I think just as a reminder to maybe the newer board members, district obtained a grant from DESI to do exactly that. It was a regionalization grant, but what it was about regionalization of services, right? And so we sent out an RFP, we did all that, and the Abrams group came in and they did a, you know, again, I think pretty, it was during COVID, so it was, again, for where we were kind of stuck, what we could do, they did a nice job with identifying, you know, some regionalized services that we could, you know, we could utilize. And there's a next step to those type of regionalization grants if you plan to go forward, but at that point, another district or another entity has to sign on with you, because they're not just gonna let you keep, you know, checking this out from one side of it. And we had a partner, we have had several conversations with Winchendon. And I say several because it's every time they change a superintendent, you know, I kind of work into the conversation because we started this, quite a few years ago. So to the point where I'm now receiving phone calls from Winchendon, for example, because they'd like more information just to get some, you know, information on what is regionalization. Because if you're not regional, you don't understand. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that absolutely all for it. You know, I think that if we were just part of just the conversation a little bit sooner, we could have given them the report, so maybe they could take it another direct. It doesn't matter. They have the report if they haven't asked for it already. They've asked for a ton, so I'm going to assume they haven't. And we have other information that I'm going to share that I don't know that they know. There was a study done for another district that, you know, people can use as a template. So fact is that we're really all for that. We've checked into it as well. I don't know how it all kind of spiraled out of control as bad as it did, but the fact is that it was never about that group. I don't know who's on it, to be very candid. I don't know when it meets or anything like that, but you know, Holly and I have had conversations about information, just as Jen said. So whatever assistance we could be, we will be. So far, so good, I guess.
Next point of business, so Board Docs, which is the platform on which we load agendas, minutes, et cetera. They were bought out by a company called Diligent several years ago. And as what happens when companies buy out other companies, eventually they force you to move into their platform. And they eliminate the old platform. So we reviewed this, looked at costs, at the district operation, our last district operations meeting, and voted to pass it through to the school committee. This, as much as it's an ask, it's also a requirement of the nature of these things. And so the cost is $7,700 now. It was previously
$5,700, now it's not,
thank you. So essentially they are waiving the cost to do the platform upgrade, which is a darn good thing because they're not giving us any choice. I did check with Anne Marie. There's not, there's no requirement to go out to bid. We also don't have a lot of time here. We have to do this by the end of the month, but this is something we'll look a little bit closer at next time we have an opportunity to.
But I'm asking to move this forward because if we can't post our meetings and we can't post our minutes, we go out of compliance with the open meeting law and that causes all kinds of headaches that we don't want. So I would entertain a motion to approve the transition from board docs to diligent and the associated $7,700 yearly cost. So moved. Motion by Heather, second by Sean. Any questions or comments?
Yes, just to be clear, it's $2,000.
It's a $2,000 increase, right?
Are we getting any additional features with that $2,000 increase? Are
Yes.
worth noting?
I know we attended the meeting.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to decide
Yeah,
this,
okay.
so I do want to know, but it's upgraded, I'm sure it's got all kinds of bells and whistles, so.
Yeah. We're hoping it's less bug.
Yeah.
Yes, we don't enjoy the bugs in board docs. Any other questions or comments? So just to clarify, what next steps will be is we'll schedule a meeting to better understand what that looks like, figure out what transition will be. Heather was volunteered / voluntold.
Think it was voluntold.
Yes.
And I seated.
Yes. Because she takes care of, it is funny how that happens. Well, she takes care of policy, and so she posts a lot of the policy, so I need someone there who takes care of policy to really understand what the changes are there. So we have a motion on the table. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, and I say yes, so that is unanimous. We have a donation this evening. Is someone prepared to speak to that?
Given, from Mary Martin, she's one of our employees, there's still a bass drum mallet.
Bass drum.
Brand new edition, it's valued at $75 and she'd like to donate it to her.
Excellent. I would entertain a motion to accept the donation of a bass drum mallet from Mary Martin valued at $75.
So moved.
Motion by Sean.
Second.
Second by Jeff. Any questions or comments about the bass drum mallet?
You never had too many, Steve.
Drums. And please do pass along our thanks to Ms. Martin. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, and I say yes. And we, in our final piece of business, have the next year's school calendar to review.
Talk, because I might get in.
So we have a representative committee that includes quite a few teachers and representation across all of our buildings. Which is called the calendar committee, right, appropriately named. The calendar committee met, they reviewed 2 different drafts of the school calendar for next year. One starting before Labor Day, one starting after Labor Day, with a few different considerations for dates. There was some conversation around, you know, where the holidays fell and so forth. And so what you have in front of you is the draft school calendar that is recommended from that committee. Some of the major changes you'll see is includes moving professional development days from Fridays to Wednesdays. That was actually a request from the administration and teachers because our attendance rates have been challenging on Fridays. Staff attendance rates have been very challenging on Fridays. And so the rationale was thinking moving those midweek would support a better attendance. That also allowed us to shift some of our other half-day dates later in the week, so you'll see like parent-teacher conference dates shifted from midweek then to towards the end of the week, so there's less disruption for students in the middle of the week with those half days. Outside of that, it was kind of pretty straightforward. It was pretty much a unanimous vote on the committee to look at coming back date on the calendar. And we just, one of the things we always make sure is that our graduation date will align, our last day of school will align, so our graduation date can be within so many days for our seniors, to align with MGL around that as well. So, this is the calendar that the committee put forward and is.
Have an observation / question. I noticed that the half-day PD days are on different days of the week than what has been typical. They're in the middle of the week.
Yes, I just, yes.
Okay,
So
sorry.
historically, we've done them in the past, years ago, they were midweek.
Yeah.
So we shifted them from Fridays to Wednesdays at the recommendation of both the administrators and the teachers. Because there's been a challenge with teacher absences on Fridays, staff, I should say, I'm sorry, staff absences on Fridays. Which we are addressing, but also, there were a variety of different reasons for that too, so. Sure.
Motion. Which was to accept the 2025-2026 school year calendar as presented. Any questions or comments?
Who's that second?
That's Nick.
Thank you.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. And I say yes, so that is unanimous. Any closing comments this evening?
Good one.
Yeah.
How about a bright spot? I did get the opportunity to go to the NDP building today. You all should go. I'm telling you, we need to continue to do that. That's a very good thing for our students who want to enter those fields of blue collar. So just FYI, you should go. It was very good. And my tech crew, thanks to the superintendent, Tom Brown, and I don't know what her position is, but Kate, thank you. So
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you
Yep.
got to go see that. So it's on my list, but
And-
unfortunately I've had a lot of meetings that have taken me away from.
and Christopher Mullen did attend with me as well. So
Excellent.
and I appreciate you taking me.
I have a comment too, and I have also a follow-up comment too, so let me just wrap that down, okay? But I don't know if everybody knows, but just a quick note that tomorrow is March 21st. It is World Down Syndrome Day. In the heart of every person with Down syndrome, and their loved ones lies a powerful dream, a world where everyone is accepted, understood, and loved unconditionally. While this idea is something we should strive for every single day, tomorrow offers a dedicated opportunity to celebrate the lives and achievements of individuals with Down syndrome. Let's use this day to raise awareness, challenge stigmas, and empower individuals with Down syndrome to live full, meaningful lives, pursuing their passion and contributing to their unique talents to our communities. So if you know anybody with Down syndrome, please give them an extra hug or a high five.
And wear
And
mismatching mismatching socks. Say that is the international.
Yes, it is.
My sign for that your support.
Thank you for me. Yes.
This is my 53rd budget. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but don't be disheartened because there's always next year.
Alright. I apologize, I have a typo in the next meeting date. The date is correct, April 17th, 2025. I copied over last year's and I forgot to change Wednesday to Thursday, so my apologies. So it is Thursday, April 17th, 2025 at 5:30 PM. The following week is April vacation, so we kindly avoided that for everyone. We do not need executive session this evening, and so it is with great joy that I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, everyone.